Hi, everyone, and welcome to Behind the Numbers. This is the show that goes beyond the data to explore the people, the stories, and the insights that really drive business success. I'm your host, Dave Bookbinder, and I thank you for joining me today. Today, we're going to be having a really interesting conversation about helping organizations to build better managers. And I'm pleased to welcome Brian Walch, who's the owner of Shift Focus Coaching and Consulting, to have that discussion. Brian, welcome to Behind the Numbers.
Thanks, Dave. Excited to be here this morning.
Yeah, so besides that very short intro that I just did for you, why don't you tell the audience a little bit about who you are and your background?
I'd love to. So my name is Brian Walch. I'm the owner of Shift Focus Coaching and Consulting based in Anchorage, Alaska. And I started this business about a couple of years ago after almost 30 years in software development. I spent 25 years at a local IT consulting firm. We started out here in Anchorage, and we had one office when I joined, maybe about 20 employees. And over 25 years, we grew to 7 offices, over 200 employees. And I got to fill through that whole time, I got to fill just a diverse set of roles. So I did software development, technical project management. I ran a recruiting program for about 20 years. I led HR for many years, was on the board of directors. I was a shareholder of the company. Did some business development and led offices. So it was great. And at a certain point, I kind of decided, what do I want to do for the rest of my life? And decided I wanted to have a bigger impact in people. And so I now focus my work on empowering managers. And it just kind of came out of a lot of things I saw doing these projects for clients where, when we had a good project, could always attribute good management and good managers. And we had a bad project, there was always not such a good manager. And so, and then also just my experience in the firm and what I experienced in my career and careers of people that I worked with. I really felt like managers are the place where we can have a big impact in how people feel about work, and how they feel about work is how they go home and how they interact with their friends and their family and how they support their communities. And if we can change work, I think we can change the world. So that was kind of the impetus for starting Shift Focus and the focus of my work.
That's great. Great backstory. And by the way, we have listeners in Alaska, but you are my first guest on the program who is from Alaska, as far as I can recall.
Awesome.
So
well,
congratulations on that. So you highlighted why you focus on managers, and that makes a whole lot of sense. Where are companies missing the mark when they're thinking about managers? What's the disconnect? Why are you focused on them, and why are you finding the companies may not be?
Honestly, Dave, I think you and I share this. It's a little bit of a mystery to me why they don't focus more on managers, because you see so many reports of engagement and investment in people, and the returns and the investments the returns and gains that come when you invest on people. I think it's just people get busy and neglect their career. They neglect their managers and focus in on their organizations. And you see it. You see just kind of underperformance of low financial results, low growth. And so, for me, I think about one time when I worked at a startup in Silicon Valley, and I had this task to write a developer guide. And I had done a lot of kind of superficial stuff. But when I wrote this developer guide, I gave it to the VP of engineering, and she looked at it and she's like, "Oh, you're missing a whole lot of detail." And she said, "Well, here, let me give you an example." And she gave me an example, wrote it down. I'm like, "Oh, I understand now what it means to really write a developer's guide." And I think for organizations that are not investing deeply, that's kind of what they think. Like, "Oh, we'll just do some training. We'll do some, we'll kind of implement this packaged program, and or we've got a specific problem and we want a quick fix." And they're not cognizant and aware of what really investing in your managers and developing managers takes. And so they're not seeing the gains, and they don't realize the returns that really can come from that, and the potential that can come from that.
Yeah, they focus on the technical stuff. At least that's what I've seen growing up in corporate America. There's a lot of focus on the technical skills, the continuing professional education stuff, the how to do the job? What else do you need to know? What's latest and greatest in the space and so forth? But very few and far between conversations about how to be better leaders. And when you think about the managers, I mean, they're in that sandwich spot where they've got to figure out how to navigate the communications upwards and downwards. And one of the things I wanted to ask you with regards to that downwards communication for a second here is a lot of times they're now managing their peers, their friends, the ones they sort of grew up with inside the organization. Somebody got promoted, somebody didn't, and now they're in charge of them. How do you help them navigate that situation?
Yeah, it is like a common situation. And uh, the big part with managers is they're often getting in these roles where they're unsure. They're nervous, they're anxious, they're like, "Oh my gosh, I don't know how to do this." And that's a perfect one. And the first step is bringing awareness to that, acknowledging we have a different relationship. What does this look like now that I'm your manager? Or, just doing that personal work first, and then kind of figuring out what is this relationship going to look like? What do I want it to look like? How are we going to navigate this? And then strategies for that. Every relationship is a little bit different. So number one is awareness, and then number two is communication. How do you want to communicate that? What's your goal? What's your ambition for that relationship? And those two things, if the manager is thinking about that and putting a plan in place, often they have the solution, as opposed to just saying, "Oh my gosh, this is a difficult or complex situation. I don't know what to do," and throw up their hands.
Yeah, so since we touched on that piece, I think we have to at least touch on the managing up component, because now that's a different dynamic. Once they become a manager, now they've got a direct report that they're responsible for communicating to and delivering to. How do they navigate that circumstance? So much change going on there in their careers.
Yeah, the thing that, back to what I said about why are organizations not investing or taking advantage of their managers, this is I think these kind of problems are the things that managers have to, at a general level, just understand. They've now stepped into a very complex role, and they've stepped into a new career path, or a shift in their career path. And just like they invested a lot of time, they probably went to school, they've done self-study to gain all these technical skills or skills that made them a great individual contributor. They now have to invest a lot of time and energy into becoming a great manager. And so the first thing is, there's not just a script or a simple fix to say, how do you manage up? How do you deal with your boss or your manager? So there's great books and tools to understand that. The first thing I kind of coach people on is, what is in your self-interest. So, often managers will be like, "Why? They're my boss. I'm just going to receive things from them." And so the first thing is getting that intention of, "Hey, this is in my best interest to work with my boss to figure out how do I get what I need to be successful, and how do I give them what they need to manage me successfully." And so that's the start. And number two is constant learning and evolving.
Yeah, so I'm going to put you on the spot, and from the very big picture perspective, what are some of the most important things that managers need to do or need to know about that role?
Well, I line out four things, four areas that they need to focus on for that role, and the stage they're at. So every manager goes through, just like all of us go through, a progression in our roles. We start out, we kind of have to learn the job, and then we get good at the job, and then we kind of want to do something special. And so, depending on where they're at, they may be different, but those four areas they have to focus on are: the first one is relationships and influence. And you mentioned two of them: the people I manage and my manager. There's also relationships like their peers. And that's often a relationship managers neglect, is developing strong peer relationships. But there's other relationships they might consider. So relationships and influence is number one. Two is the skills and experience. Like you said, that's where everybody gravitates to. That's just one of the four. Third one is, what are the results that they are responsible for? and making sure that they're clear with their manager, understanding how is success measured, what are we driving to, and are we aligned, and what my priorities are and what the priorities of the organization are. And then the fourth one is the systems. And this can be the systems that they use to do their work, like the technical systems or the kind of the operational systems of how the organization flows. It's also their personal systems. So like an example would be like a personal productivity system, understanding that the to-do list and the things I use to manage my productivity as an individual contributor have to evolve and have to upgrade as I take on more responsibility and my role gets more complex.
Yeah, and if you're talking to the business owner, the leaders of the organization, and you're talking to them about promoting people into management roles, and you want to defeat the usual criteria of they're good at what they do, they're technically savvy. What would you tell them that they need to think about before they promote somebody into a managerial role?
That's a great question because, like I said, the way I help organizations think about it is your people are progressing through these roles. And so, when somebody kind of learns a job, then they start getting good at the job. That's often when people are starting to think like, oh, I want to be promoted, or they might be ready for promotion. And so what you're trying to do is first of all, identify who are those people that are really kind of at the top of their game. If you think about a specific role, you can probably identify like what that looks like. It's like they're pretty well respected among their peers and their team. They can handle like a wide variety of situations. They can handle things, um, circumstances or disruptions that come at them. Those kinds of things you can count on them, and those are the people that you would say like, oh, we need to promote them. But what I would encourage or coach organizations is to think, how can I give them what I call a pioneer opportunity, something that gives them exposure to the next level or make a significant contribution in the company. Not everybody wants to necessarily be promoted. And we think like, oh, they need to be promoted, but some people don't want to go back to that. Like, I got to learn things again. They like being, a kind of a master of things, but they want to contribute more. They want to have a bigger impact. And so that manager's role and the organization's role is to find out how can we support this person's career ambitions. And I tell them you want to think it's not how long can you keep them, it's how far can you take them. Sometimes paths diverge, but you want to keep your interest, the organization's interests, aligned with the individual's interests as long as possible at the highest level of performance.
Yeah, it's a great observation because not everybody wants to take on the roles of management in terms of the responsibilities of being in charge of other people, for example. And that's a
Yeah.
great point and something to consider. Um, so when you think about the managers and you're speaking to them, if they have aspirations to get promoted and they've been in the seat for some time, whatever that may look like, what's your counsel to them on how they can demonstrate that they're ready to be promoted up in the organization?
Oh, yeah. The first thing I tell people is make it known. Like if you want to be a manager or you think you want to be a manager, make that known. And that's something that I've just seen a lot of people kind of say, well, what do I need to do? And it's like, well, the first thing is talk to your boss or talk to somebody in leadership and let them know you have an interest in this. The second thing is to try to get some experience doing that. Well, I'd say the second thing is talk to somebody that's in that role. That's kind of like design thinking is like go and talk to somebody that's doing what you want to do and find out, is it all that you think? And the third is try out that role a little bit. I give the analogy of being in a kayak. So when you get into a kayak, you put one foot in and it's kind of wobbly and you're kind of holding onto the dock, and you get the other foot in and you sit in there and it's still shaky, and it's like, do you want to push off from the dock or not? Once you do, you're committed, and it's going to be a little rough until you figure out how to paddle and make that kayak really go smoothly. And so that's a big commitment. And, if somebody gets into management and is unhappy, those are big implications for them personally in their career, for the team that they lead, and for the organization. And so if they can the organization can find opportunities to give that individual exposure to what management's like, to leading people, to dealing with, helping people grow, some of the problems that come forward before they let go of the dock and really go out there, that can help the individual show them what they're capable of, but also learn, is this something I want to commit this next part of my career to?
Yeah, the kayak analogy is a great one. I love that one. I want to ask you about the younger generation. I can't keep track of the gens, the Gen X, Y, Z, where they stratify, but I'll just bucket it into, we'll call them the younger professionals who come into an organization. Because I hear from so many people that their younger staff is very demanding of wanting to be promoted, 15 minutes after joining the organization. Small exaggeration there, but not much. Basically, they want to be fast tracked, maybe more so than some of the older workers, the more seasoned workers, I should say, in the organizations, what they're used to in terms of what a normal track looks like. Are you seeing that? What's your take on that whole thing?
Yes, I get the same feedback of they want to be promoted. They want to kind of move quickly through superficial experiences. I'm with you. I'm not an expert in the generations, and I kind of blend them all. But I think a lot of us kind of got thrown into these positions, figured it out, and progressed. And now we're looking back and we're like, well, they need to kind of go through that experience. And so one of the things that I do to try to help is say, well, we have to detail this out a lot more. What I talk about is make the hidden visible, make the implied explicit. And so I have a framework that kind of maps out those 4 areas I talked about, and there's 3 areas of progression, and helping managers be explicit and make that all visible, so the employee understands, no, there is a lot of work you have to do to actually become proficient and master this stage, or move on before you can move on to the next stage. Whether that's whether that solves the problem, it gives the manager something to coach to discuss, and it kind of puts the onus on them to really support those younger employees, or those employees that really want to advance quickly. Because I guess it doesn't help an organization to just move people up to, I've seen where kind of managers get worn down. They're like, fine, we're gonna give you the title, and I guess I'll deal with the kind of the fallout as we progress. And that can have very mixed results, especially if they're not performing at the level you need them to keep growing.
Yeah, I'm sure you've seen, and the audience has seen, the horror stories where somebody gets promoted. Sometimes it's a promotion outside of the organization into a new role in a new organization, and they take the leap and they're completely unprepared for it.
Yep, 100%. And that's, I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've had that conversation of, you are really shortchanging your career. And I try to tell people that when I'm talking to them about, like people coming out of college and young people, it's like these early times in your career, doing this detailed work and kind of putting in the time will serve you a lot longer, or give you a lot longer trajectory. So many people I've seen, I've done hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of interviews and read thousands of resumes, and you see people get into the 15-year mark and they just flatten because they missed out on some key opportunities and experiences early on in their career, because they were great. They got promoted really quickly without sort of the backing that they needed to do. So yeah, I think we can coach and try to counsel, and some people will listen and some people won't.
So I've shared this statistic on the program before, but it's relevant to share here again. In the U.S., as I understand it, the average age when somebody gets promoted into management is about 31. And the average age when that person gets their first management training or leadership training is about a decade later. So for 10 years or so, they're floundering, learning from whoever they may report to, Some of it may be good, some of it may not. What do you tell somebody who's listening to this? They're in management or thinking they're going to want to be in management, and they hear that and they go, "Oh my God, what do I do?" What resources would you suggest they pursue so that they can at least take some initiative and get some of that development that they may not get internally?
The first thing is, when you are moving into management, is realizing and recognizing you, of any position, this one, you are taking ownership for your career. That statistic is perfect. Like, we'd love to change everything. That's kind of the mission we're on, but it's not going to happen overnight. And so the when they move into management, they need to realize, like, this, I need to take ownership of my career. I need to seek out mentors. I need to seek out resources and studies. The Some of the books that I recommend to everybody is "When They Win, You Win," which is a book by Russ Laraway on management, and then number 2, The Coaching Habit. So those are 2 resources I recommend to everybody. And then for the individual, having a development plan, like whether it's, you could do it quarterly, definitely every year, making sure you spend some time reflecting on what have you learned, what have you grown in, what are the things that you're doing well, what areas do you want to focus on in the next year, and how can you develop those skills, and using those 4 areas that I mentioned as kind of the outline for how to think about, how do I kind of own my development.
Yeah, and for leaders and organizations that are really keen and intentional about building corporate culture, is there such a thing as a management culture?
Yeah, 100%. I think that is the culture. When I was in HR at a senior level, I would come up with ideas and push things out, and if the managers didn't want to do it or how they implemented it, that was how it worked. It wasn't me. It was the managers that were doing it, and so you however you are building culture, your managers are the ones that are actually implementing and making that alive. And how they do that is going to be the culture. So that's what I talk about. It is management culture, as much as anything.
Yeah, good point. Because I just expound on that by sharing that a lot of times it's the leaders who are trying to drive the culture, right? And it starts at the top. But if somebody on the eighth floor doesn't get the memo, so to speak, and doesn't adhere to what leadership is trying to do culture-wise and how they foster it, then the whole thing unfolds. Because as somebody once told me on this program, culture is local, and it could be different floor to floor.
Yeah. Yeah, and like you said, if the executives all say, we want to improve employee engagement, we want our managers to really spend time developing their employees, but they're not getting that development, that's not gonna, there's a lack of integrity there. And so, on the flip side, if your managers are feeling fulfilled in their career, if they're feeling empowered, if they feel like they're growing and have opportunities, they're going to have more chance. There's going to be a higher likelihood that they're going to have successful employees. Their employees are going to feel that way. So really, it's like how you build your managers and how you develop your managers and how they feel about work is going to be a big impact and driver in culture.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I just emphasize this again because of that gap between when people are promoted into management and when they get their first training. I've seen the horror stories in real life where somebody's got a really bad boss. I don't even say abusive, but just bad boss in the typical form. And that's what they learn from. And they feel like they're beaten up and taken advantage of. And what do? They push that down, and then they become that bad boss.
Yeah, yeah, totally. And like you said, it's not even like, it doesn't have to be a toxic boss. It could be a bad boss. It could even just be I guess, for lack of a better word, incompetent. Like, they haven't had, they don't know what they don't know. And the other problem with that is, I mean, there's so many, like, lost opportunities and cost impact to that. But back to your comment about the earlier or the younger generations, that's what they're seeing. I've seen statistics and reports that say the younger generation, they don't want to go into management. They don't want to go into these leadership roles. Well, it's partly because they aren't seeing great examples. Like if you as an organization can build great managers, that's what people are going to look at. They're going to say, oh, I want to aspire to be like them. And now all of a sudden you're starting to build a leadership capacity in your organization. But it has to be modeled, and the manager has to be somebody that is admired by the junior people.
Yeah, and in that spirit, I want to talk to you about, I don't want to call them the soft skills. They're really the necessary skills, the non-technicals, and what should be emphasized, because one of the topics that's come up on this program a lot, and I've been invited to speak on, is the superpower of empathy. And I think it starts with, knowing how you want to be treated and then treating people the way they want to be treated. But I'm going to let you comment on what are the essential skills, non-technicals, that folks should be thinking about and focusing on developing.
Well, yeah, empathy, I kind of lump into that broader category of emotional intelligence and understanding yourself. So self-awareness, empathy, and then I guess I'm drawing a blank on what I'd call it, but it's communication. It's like, how do I understand myself? How do I understand you? And then how do I interact in a way that is conducive to that? So that interpersonal relationships, and I put those all under emotional intelligence. And I think it's important to label that as a skill that needs developing for everybody. We all have different levels, but we can always develop and improve those skills. And so that's number one is emotional intelligence, and lump some of those skills. And as a manager coming into that role, that's important to acknowledge and develop and continually work on. And then the second one is communication, but that's so broad. What I coach people on is to say, okay, you will always need to be working on your communication skills. What is it you're trying to do now? How are you going to use that skill? Is it the one-on-one interactions and building that, or is it the one-to-many? Is it talking to the executives? Is it talking to clients? Let's get nuanced on that, and then let's develop that skill. So those are the two broad ones that I would say are just critical coming in the door that you need to be thinking about if you're a new
Yeah, and
manager.
as you're sharing that, it struck me. I mean, spot on. You can't just assume that just because you report up to somebody who has a better title, a higher title on the org chart than you, that they possess those necessary skills, that they have the emotional intelligence. And I was thinking how important it is to have mentors, not just inside your own organization, but outside your organization, so that you can experience and what modeled behavior looks like and learn from others so that you can begin to formulate your own style.
Yeah. I, it's funny. You as you go through your career, you just kind of have your one person, your two people that you maybe look through, and early on in your career, the path's kind of mapped out and the people are there. But as you progress, when you get in your 30s, mid 30s, and you're starting to get promoted, those mentors kind of they fade off a little bit, and so you do have to be proactive in identifying who do I admire, who do I want to emulate, what are the traits and abilities and that are important to me, and identifying that, and then saying, well, how do I build those relationships that can help me continue to grow. And mentoring, I think, is this broad thing, but it's something that individuals need to be active in. And somebody once said, like, we have to nurture mentors all the time, and it's true.
Yeah. We're getting close to the end here, Brian, but before we do wrap, I want to give you the final word and let you share any tips or advice that you may have, either for managers, aspiring managers, or for the organizations out there that are trying to grow good managers.
Yeah, my one message that I always say is just invest in your managers. I mean, that's kind of my mission. I think when people talk to me, organizations talk to me, a lot of times they're price sensitive about investing in their managers and their people, and is like, if you invest $1, the chances you won't at least get your money back are so slim. It doesn't even make sense to do. Like, typically the returns are 4 to 5 times what you invest. And when I'm talking to organizations, it's like we're looking for a 10x return on the investment they make, and it's possible. So thinking about how to develop people, it's like, just start with investing in your managers and empower them and let them direct some of the direction. In terms of me and my work, I mean, if anyone's listening and they want to talk more about either their management structure and in their organization, or just their career as a manager, I'd be happy to schedule a call. People can go to my website, and if you just go to shiftfocus.com/strategy call, you can book a time to talk to me. I'm active on LinkedIn, and so if somebody wants to send me a connection request and just mention they saw me on the show, I'd be happy to connect there. I share a lot of stuff there. And then my website has a sign up. I do a kind of a regular, try to do it once a week, but a regular email out to subscribers, and people can subscribe to that on my website as well at shiftfocus.com.
That's awesome. Brian, thanks so much for joining us today and sharing all this great wisdom with us. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Dave. I appreciate all the work you do. I think it's very important to think about the new ROI and investing in people.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, the new ROI is the return on individuals. And I think you hit the nail on the head with all that stuff today. So thank you. And thank you out there for listening to Behind the Numbers. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment, leave us a review on Apple or Spotify. You know how to do it. And I don't need to tell you that makes a big difference and that we really do appreciate it. Also, don't forget to crush that subscribe button so that you don't miss an episode. Until next time, my name is Dave Bookbinder, reminding you that the numbers tell the story, but the people bring it to life. So take care, everybody.